get everyone out early so we could come back tomorrow for the work day. Did you guys go home and tell your parents about the work day? You did? I was wrong. I apologize. I falsely accused you. I falsely accused you of not doing it. So
Now you know.
my bad. Next time I won't even post it. I couldn't tell. But since we're going to postpone it, but it's still going to be short for that reason. Yeah, we'll do that over. I think I'm just going to keep pushing it. Hopefully, we're still in focus.
Yeah.
Okay. Adonai, we have eaten and we are satisfied. Thank you for them in Yeshua's name. So, a couple things before we get started. You got some of you may or may not be familiar with a guy named Noe. Noe attends the congregation here. He's the head maintenance guy. He's responsible for all the construction and a bunch of the wiring, fixing the floors and fixing plumbing, stuff. And not just that, wife and kiddos multiple times a week come here and they maintain the cleanliness of the building. They would take pipes and make sure the floors are swept and mopped, all the chairs are where they're supposed to be to make sure. And they do it for this amount of stuff. For us, every time I needed something, it's either Noe or it's a young lady named Shannon who comes to the rescue when something happens, So, that's what about is, may teach another Wednesday evening. Service for them. Anyone's tracking. Anybody who knows Noe and his family, they're just wonderful people. Really, really great people. It's amazing. So I think I need to come to her. And I'd like to do it sooner than later. So with that, anybody got any questions?
Another episode of Parashah Points, short, which is Hebrew for come, and it goes from Exodus 10 to Exodus 13:16. This parashah tells a story of the last 3 plagues that God sent upon Egypt. It tells the story of the first Passover when Israel put the blood of the lamb on their doorposts to be spared from the last plague, the death of the firstborn. We also read about the Exodus from Egypt. The parashah concludes with God giving instructions for Passover, unleavened bread, and the consecration of the firstborn. There's a lot we can talk about in this Torah portion. Today, we're going to explore some common questions about Passover. In our Torah portion this week, instructions are given regarding the first Passover, a memorial meal commemorating Israel's deliverance. throughout your generations. The instructions found in this chapter, common questions among believers' interest in how the Torah and feast days apply to us today. What is going on in Exodus 12, and how does it relate to how we observe the Passover today? The first question that often comes up concerns Moses' instructions about selecting a lamb and slaughtering it ourselves. Is this something we should be doing today? Should we be slaughtering lambs in our backyards every year? What many people might not realize is that Exodus 12 has specific instructions that apply only to the first Passover event in Egypt. Slaughtering the lamb at home, putting the blood on their doorposts, and eating it in haste with your belt fastened and your sandals on your feet and your staff in your hand were instructions that applied only to those Israelites in Egypt. After this Passover, the lamb was only to be slaughtered at the tabernacle and later the temple. How do we know that? Well, because the Torah says so. Deuteronomy chapter 16. Observe the month of the Passover to Yahweh. Yahweh your God provided by sacrifice to Yahweh your God, the flock or the herd, at the place Yahweh used to make his name dwell there. You may not offer Passover sacrifice in any of your towns that Yahweh your God is giving you. Place Yahweh your God will choose to make his name dwell in it. There you shall offer the Passover sacrifice in the evening at sunset, at the time you came out of Egypt. And you shall cook it and eat at the place Yahweh your God will choose. And in the morning you shall turn and go to your tents. Since there is no temple and functioning priest in Jerusalem today, we cannot apply this instruction to slaughter the lamb at the place where Yahweh chose to make his name dwell. What that means is that we cannot actually have a Passover today, since the lamb itself is Passover. That's the reason many Jews traditionally don't serve lamb at their Seder's. There are other aspects that we can observe, such as having a memorial meal with bitter herbs and unleavened bread. As far as the actual Passover is concerned, we still have to wait until the Messiah comes and reestablish the priesthood in Jerusalem before we can enjoy Passover in all of its fullness. Another issue that often comes up is regarding circumcision. Exodus 12:48 says that the only way a non-Israelite was allowed to eat of the Passover was if they became circumcised. Does this mean that physically uncircumcised believers aren't allowed to join a Passover Seder? Should people who host Passover Seders at their homes and congregations be asking to check people at the door? Technically, since Passover in this context refers specifically to the sacrifice, the lamb itself, nobody is able to eat the Passover today. Again, the only way to offer the Passover sacrifice is to do it at the tabernacle and temple in Jerusalem. Since there is no way to even have a Passover, there is no way to apply the restrictions upon uncircumcised men eating it. There is no restriction upon uncircumcised men partaking in a Seder and observing the days of unleavened bread. Now, circumcision is still a commandment that we keep out of obedience as a result of our faith in Messiah, and it will certainly be relevant again in regard to Passover when the temple and priesthood are restored in the millennial kingdom. If you want more information on that topic, please see our two-part series, Circumcision, the Eternal Sign, and How to Circumcise Your Heart. However, as far as our observance of Passover today is concerned, there doesn't appear to be any reason to make sure that your Seder participants are physically circumcised. We hope that some of these insights were helpful, and thank you for joining us for another Parashah Point. We pray that you've been blessed by this teaching, and remember, continue to test everything. Shalom.
Any questions about what we just saw? Anybody got any problems with any of that? There's so many people in here.
So he's not saying, he's not saying that that's the only thing you can't do, right, is the slaughtering the Passover lamb, and he's not negating the days of unleavened bread, right?
No, not at all. He's just saying, don't be trying to sacrifice a lamb in your backyard. Only do it in your front yard. It's not saying that either. I'm just joking. Right. No, just because the lamb is the Passover, we don't have the right. We're not actually keeping Passover, but we are having a memorial remembrance kind of a rehearsal, if you will, for the day when we can fully keep the Passover, where we are supposed to keep the Passover, which is, of course, Jerusalem. But traditionally, just so everybody knows, Passover has traditionally been my favorite holiday. It's always been just a good time. It's a few hours long, good food, good people. It's a good time, and we're starting to plan for it right now because it's coming up. Right, it's the next thing, right? This is our first verse, in case anyone wanted to see the vowel pointers. And I looked over it, made sure that we got the right pronunciation underneath. So let's get started. Moshe said, "Go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the hearts of his servants, so that I show the signs of my performance." How many mitzvot, according to Rambam, are in this portion? Who says A, 14? You got 2 right there. Who says B, 21? Playing bingo. Captain says 21. What about 30? C. And 12? D, you say 12? All right. Before we answer, who is Rambam? Anybody?
He's Devil's Orchard.
That's Bam Bam. Who is the Rambam? Maimonides, yeah. Well, his name was Moses ben Maimon. Where was he from? Chicago. Anybody? Where was Maimonides from? What was his primary job in life, his profession? Huh?
Alexandria?
No, it wasn't from Alexandria. Anybody? He was from Spain. And his primary profession was, he was a physician, also a rabbi. Just a little All right, so let's see what we got here. It's not 30. Nobody guessed 30 anyway. It's now 14.
I say B. Oh.
Good job, Captain. So most say there are 20 mitzvot, but Rambam says there's 21. So we're going to go through them, and you try to tell me which one you think might not be there in the count that everyone says is 20. So just remember the types of mitzvot. The reasons for it are always stated. The reasons for mishpatim are always obvious. Hukim, neither stated nor obvious. There are a total of 613 commandments, and not all of them apply to every person. And a negative commandment says, do not do this, and a positive commandment says, do this. Right? You can't do it or you will. That's negative, positive, not good or bad like we think in Western time. So let's get started. Mitzvah number 120, the courts must calculate to determine when a new month begins. And the scripture says, this month is the beginning of months for you. It is the first month of the year for you. Where does it say the courts must calculate the month for you, when the new month begins? Anybody? It doesn't say that. It's an extra biblical, yep. And so there were truly, you might remember, when we started the study of Mitzvot a couple of years ago, you might remember that we said that there was a council of people, and they had specific questions to find out when the new month started, and they would put these people to the test. Where did you see it? Where in the sky was it? What did it look like? Take a look at these pictures. What was it? And then it was at that point that some elders would decide that the new month had started, right? Mitzvah 404, to slaughter the paschal sacrifice at the specified time. And you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. All the assembly of congregation of Israel shall kill it between the evenings. I'd say that's a pretty good one. It's straightforward. It is to slaughter the paschal sacrifice at the specified time. That's a good mitzvah. Does it apply to us right now? Yes. Yep. Only if you do it in your front yard, not your backyard, your front yard. 408. To eat the paschal lamb with matzah and maror on the night of the 14th of Nisan, and they will eat the flesh on that night, roasted in fire with the unleavened bread and bitter herbs, they shall eat it. That's probably a good one too. Not to eat the paschal meat raw or boiled, and it specifically says, do not eat it raw nor boiled at all with water, but roast it in fire. So that's probably a good one too, right? So 4:17, do not leave any meat from the paschal offering until morning. Do not leave any of it until morning. What remains of it till morning you are to burn with fire. So this is kind of a escape here. Do not leave any of it until morning. But if you do, burn it with fire.
It's kind of like, do this, but I know you're not gonna do it, so here's what you do.
So I did hear one rabbi explain that they would eat all of it that they could, but there's always still just a little bit of meat left on those bones. You know, you can't just clean it all off. So that's what you're supposed to burn. Nobody ever expected to burn a whole piece of a shank or big bites of meat because it was all supposed to be eaten, right? So
It might also too be because people, like country roads, you feed your scraps to the animals, and that probably be very, very
Don't feed what's left over there.
Yeah, because that's, you kind of think about when you have nice meat and stuff, like, oh, just give the rest of it
to the chickens.
to the dogs or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mitzvah 109, to destroy all the chametz on the 14th day of Nisan. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Indeed, on the first day you cause leaven to cease from your houses. Whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the seventh, that means God. So how do we get to destroy all the chametz on the 14th day out of that verse? We have another extra biblical. Most people would go out and burn it. Some people I've heard of bury it, that kind of thing. And some people will save one piece, to say, hey, I'm burning this. I've gotten all of it out that I know of. There's even a prayer that people say, I've done my best. I've searched my house a lot. And this is the last thing I can find, and they burn it. I know some people, as a tradition, who know that they have still sin in their life will write it down on a piece of paper and burn it with the last piece of chametz as a symbolic thing of it's time to get rid of it, since we know that leaven is compared with sin often, so that's a tradition, but I'm not sure we can get the a mitzvah to destroy all chametz on the 14th day of Nisan. But certainly we want to get it out of our houses and get rid of it, right? Let me ask an opinion from you guys. Those of us who live out in the country, we have septic systems. We don't have a pipe that goes to the city lifting station and to go out to someplace like that. We have our own tanks at our house, and sometimes we have a sewage lagoon, or sometimes we have a tank like I have, and sprinklers so it goes in certain chambers. It's really nasty here. It's a little bit less nasty, a little bit less nasty. Then finally, once it's over here, it's gray water, and it gets put out and waters the grass in certain areas. So we know that one of the things that we do with those a couple times a year is we put some yeast down, we flush it, and that helps really break down all the nastiness in those first couple of chambers there, right? So if we did that, are we keeping the commandment? Because it's still kind of within our dwelling, right? Or it's out there on our property, the yeast. Are we still guilty of this? Just want an opinion. There's no biblical precedent for it. Should we completely get rid of it out of our property, or is it safe to flush down the toilet and let it do its job? What do you think? Am I stretching? Yeah, I'm stretching a little bit? All right, got it. Mitzvah 114, to eat matzah on the first night of Passover, on the first month of the 14th day of the month. The evening you will eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month in the evening. That's a pretty good one. 113, do not find chametz in your domain for 7 days. For 7 days, no leaven is to be found in your houses, for if anyone eats what is leavened, that being shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether sojourner or native in the land. So no leaven is to be found in your houses. There's something right there. It doesn't say you can't put it out by your pond. Gonna say something, Wayne?
Well, I think it's the border. I think you'll also see it in the
Borders of your land. Yeah, it's not just your houses.
That's always the strangest thing, because in St. Louis, at all the stores downtown, and down in all of that, they would just mark off and put ropes around
Yeah.
their things, and then they'd also to lend it to their, send stuff to their neighbors.
And then get it back when it's over.
Sell the product.
Here, you wanna buy my sins? I'll get them back next
I'll
week.
sit for a while, yeah.
I'll come back and get them next week. Right? 111, do not eat mixtures containing chametz all 7 days of Passover. I'll buy it, all right. It's kind of restating another one that's like it though. An apostate must not eat from it. Adonai said the most in there, this is the law of Passover. No son of a stranger is to eat of it. No apostate. Guess it depends on what we're calling apostate, but no son of a stranger. So, what do you think about this mitzvah here? If we were able to keep Passover for real,
Yeah, that's, none of the, if you use the excuse that, we can't really do Passover, then none of these are requirements.
for right now, I think that's right. No, almost
You
not.
get to pick and choose what your group wants to incorporate.
Except for unleavened bread, right?
I don't know.
It's in all your dwellings throughout.
Wherever you are.
Yeah.
So what we know for sure we can't do is sacrifice the Passover. Because the lamb is the Passover. Yeshua is the Passover. So, but what we can do, and we're commanded to do, is keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread no matter where you are.
So then why can't we want circumcision?
Because circumcision is specific for the Passover, not unleavened bread.
Yeah,
It's not about, it doesn't say that the uncircumcised cannot eat unleavened, or no. It doesn't say that it's specifically for the Passover that they can't, the uncircumcised can't do.
don't let uncircumcised people eat unleavened bread. It doesn't say that, but it does say don't let uncircumcised people eat the Passover, which is the lamb.
And we all hold Passover saying no uncircumcised person.
We've had, when we hold our Seder's, we don't care because we're not keeping
That's
Passover.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They can pick and choose.
Well, but
Kind of.
because it says specifically to eat it in the place where God said his name.
That's the
That's the
If
key.
we're doing that, then yeah.
then we would definitely,
Since you're not,
but it's not the same thing as the Feast of Unleavened Bread, though. That is something that's completely separate from the Passover, even though today it's all lumped together as one 14-day Passover celebration. They're two separate things, and you have to make a distinction. This is Pesach, this is unleavened bread. This we're commanded to do wherever we are.
I got you.
Ben has a comment. He says it takes 7 days to grow a new batch of yeast.
Thanks, Ben.
It might help
No,
to know-
you can't. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Yes,
It
ma'am.
might help to know why it's specific to Passover, not any other festival.
Because it says,
I mean, is there any reason, like, symbolic, whatever, why this is specific about eating of the Passover and others have to do with Yeshua? Is that why? Because, Israel, those are considered Israel, are only to eat it?
well, it's definitely, circumcision is definitely a sign of the covenant. Right? Is that what you're asking? Otherwise,
Our question really is why is the circumcision thing unique to Passover versus perhaps the other
I see.
pilgrimage feasts?
oh, well, in this case, because it would be a chukim, right?
Because Yah said so.
Because God said, yes, ma'am, it is.
Mhm.
So maybe maybe we wouldn't necessarily exactly because I haven't had it happen yet, but if you're celebrating it, we need to follow commands anyway, which means you should.
Yeah, I like it. I know for sure at some of our gatherings that we say, hey, Pesach is this day. We've had people join us who I know for sure were not. But it's not for us to judge at this moment because it's not Passover. And if we were able to keep Passover in the land right now because it was a temple and the priesthood and everything we needed to make it happen, we wouldn't be in charge of nothing anyway. We wouldn't, we're just going to go and do what God says. So at this moment,
A follow-up question from Ben. He asks, wasn't this for as they wasn't this for as they were leaving Mitzrayim? Because the rules are a little different once they got the full law, wasn't it? Question mark.
So yes, it was different when they were leaving Mitzrayim, right? Because as we'll see at a later study, they didn't circumcise their sons while they were in the
Right.
wilderness.
It's for the land, you could
So-
say, because of the amount of foreskins when people went, we're on one side of Exodus, and the other side when they go across the Jordan.
Yeah. So it is a commandment for the land of Israel and for the first Passover. But of course, they didn't do it while they were in the wilderness.
But they only had one other Passover, we can see.
That we can see. Yeah. So, hope that answers your question, Ben. So let me get back to where we were. Apostate, yep, there we go. So 413 is a permanent or temporary hired worker. I don't know if it says worked, but must not eat from it. It should be worker, not worked. A sojourner or a hired servant does not eat of it. Is that what we read? What did we read? Let's look at it. Shemot 12:45. What does it say? (12:45) says, a sojourner and a hired servant does not eat of it. Okay, so 44 before that says, but any servant a man has bought for silver, when you have circumcised him, then let him eat of it. A sojourner and a hired servant does not eat of it. It is eaten in one house, you're not taking it of it. So it kind of is what we read, but a permanent or temporary hired worker does not eat from it.
Would that be because they're not considered, as opposed to like someone that bought?
Yeah.
They're not a member.
They're not part of
Your
the children
household,
Israel.
of your
They're not
household,
part of your
yeah.
household.
Mhm.
Yeah. 411, do not take the paschal meat from the confines of the group. It is eaten in one house. You are not to take any of the flesh outside of the house, nor are you to break any bone of it. That's probably pretty good. 415, do not break any bones from the paschal offering. We just read that. That's good. Mitzvah. An uncircumcised Kohen must not eat terumah. When the stranger sojourns with you and shall perform the Passover to Adonai, let his males be circumcised, and then let him come near to perform it. He shall be as the native of the land, but let no uncircumcised eat of it. What in the world is an uncircumcised Kohen?
Is Kohen specific to the Hebrew office, or other cultures would be called that by the Israelites?
Well,
The same office.
office, I don't know. I think you can translate it as priest. I mean, the Aramaic has two different words for priest. One is kahane, and the other is not. So it would be and Jethro would not is listed as not a kahane, not a Cohen priest. So, it seems like it's not a thing. What an uncircumcised Cohen would be what a 7-day old.
A 7-day-old Cohen? He's not going to eat it anyway? So this is my opinion. This is the one. This is the mitzvah. Many lists say that there are 20 in this Parashah, but Rambam says there are 21. So I think Maimonides for this one. This one personally doesn't make sense to me. 414, an uncircumcised male must not eat from it. Well, we got that one. That's good, right? 110, no, not to eat chametz all 7 days of Passover. Once again, we have a repeat of another one. 112, do not see chametz in your domain 7 days. Another repeat. To relate the exodus from Egypt on that night. And you shall inform your son in that day, saying, is because of what Adonai did for me when I came up from Mitzrayim. I think that's pretty good too, because that's what we do at the Seder, right? We tell our children the story. And we sing Minus Dana.
Mm-hmm.
To set aside the firstborn animals that you pass over to Adonai, everyone opening the womb and every firstborn that comes from your livestock, the makes belong to Adonai. Boy, I just can't spell. The males belong to Adonai, right? That's pretty good. And of course, that was one of the questions for the youth challenge. What do you do with the donkey, right? To redeem the firstborn donkey by giving a lamb to a kohen. Every firstborn of a donkey you're to ransom with a lamb. If you do not, you shall break its neck. I don't know of any precedent for them to just break the neck. They're going to come up with a lamb, or honestly, they probably just didn't do it. To break the neck of the donkey, we already talked about that one. Let's talk about the plagues. Any questions before we move on? Any questions about those things? So you can see the ones in yellow. Those are the ones from this Torah portion. The other ones were from last Torah portion. But we're going to do a quick overview of all of them so we can see, because we talked a little bit last week, didn't go into too much detail about how that the plagues were, a very good understanding for the plagues were to pass judgment upon the gods of Israel, to show not only Pharaoh, but we opine that to show the children of Israel that the gods of Egypt that they're used to and that they know of and have knowledge of are not real, right? So it's not just for Pharaoh's sake, in our opinion, that this was also to help them understand that you can't, because even so, we look and see what happened as soon as they got over. They made the golden calf, right? So they knew what was going on. Yes, sir.
Back to the previous slide about the breaking the neck of the donkey. Ben says, one of my kids said this was because it is not a kosher animal.
Okay.
I don't know if I should say this, but my personal interpretation is because the donkey symbolizes the Democratic Party.
Oy vey. I'm not gonna repeat that so that you don't get put on a list.
So it was prophetic.
Oh my
That's
goodness,
my personal interpretation.
that's good. Thank you, whatever Cleveland kiddo came up with that. Appreciate it. Appreciate your input.
Follow on. It also makes sense that this is why a human also needs to be redeemed.
Or have their neck broke. What you got, license?
Well, I was saying that last week we talked about how the plagues were falling apart, but there's a verse in this portion that says, the locust will devour what the hail is left.
So it's been pretty recent.
Yeah, so it had to happen pretty quick after, right? Yeah. So what Constance was saying is that we talked about last week about how long did each plague last and how far apart did they occur. And she pointed out that there's a verse that says the locust will devour what the hail did not. And so it had to be pretty quick after the hail, right? The locust came. So judging and mocking the Elohim of Mitzrayim. So here we go. The Nile turns to blood. It's to judge Khnum, Hapi, and Osiris, if you will. The creator of water, life, and people, the god of the annual Nile flooding, and of course Osiris, the god of the dead and rebirth, fertility. The Nile was supposedly his bloodstream, and so turning it to blood, and they had no control over it, kind of mocks him pretty well, I'd say. Frogs, Heket, the consort of Khnum, goddess of childbirth and fertility. And so the Egyptian culture, the frog is associated with fertility and is her symbol. You can see the hieroglyphs on the left and then the statue that I had in last week's thing also. Gnats, lice, and fleas. Ma'at, this is the goddess of order and harmony and balance, and it mocked their tradition of bathing a whole bunch of times today, because no matter what, if you've got these things on you, either one of these things all over you, you still feel kind of terrible. I went camping. There's a really awesome lake Oh, you guys probably know of it. It's called Sportsman Lake
Oh, yeah.
in Seminole, America. And where I had my camper is a really nice spot. And there's woods backed up to it. I said, I'm gonna walk through the woods and see what I can see. So I walked back up through there, and I came back and I got to my camp. I looked, and I'm telling you, I was covered with ticks. Millions of them. I could not believe it. I thought they were ants, and I'm scooting them off of me. I'm covered head to toe with these things. And I'm telling you, I was traumatized. I had PTSD from that. It was just, I could not believe it. And I know there were people around, but I didn't care. I took all my clothes off and threw them in the fire right there that was still burning, trying to get them off. I went and showered and had my wife check, and and I'm telling you, it was a week. I was still feeling, I'm like, oh, I know I got them on. I know I missed some. I know they're here. It was terrible. So I couldn't believe it. I'm telling you, I was traumatized.
The duct tape.
Yeah, the little tiny seed ticks.
Yes.
Yeah, because you can't get all them things.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I think I did. I mean,
It's on microphone.
it was. I'm
Super spreader event.
man, because it really is just like from here to that wall of where my camper was in the woods. So this part was all mowed and everything. So I'm sure they had some maybe spray. But once I walked into the woods, they were on. I could not believe it. It's crazy. I know. Sorry, kind of
I've been a little bit.
feel sorry for the Egyptians here. Plague 4, the swarms. We talked a little bit about the swarms because the most popular opinion is it was swarms of flies, but there are other opinions like hordes of wild beasts or swarms of flies or swarms of some other insect or a mixed multitude of insects that it could have been. But Mean, the fertility god, a protector of crops and vegetation. Obviously, this one could not protect the crops because everything was destroyed, right, by those things. Yeah, and you can see there, there's another picture of them coming up, but we have it censored. You'll see. Judging the Hathor and Apis, cow goddess, and the sacred bull god embodiment of Osiris, one of the bulls. And this was for the pestilence that came. Obviously, the Egyptian gods were not able to save them from the pestilence either. And it's interesting because what did they make when they got to Sinai?
They made those two.
Yeah,
And they were made, from what I could read, they're made, it was just like one animal, but they were referred to in the plural, the both of those. Like I said, these are
yeah.
God, or Israel.
Even called it by the set apart name, right?
Those maybe the ones that Jeroboam made, 'cause I thought someone said he made 2 golden cows for Israel to worship after the tribes had their split.
Placed one at the end.
Bethel.
So it's possible that these were literally the things he was making.
Boils. Sekhmet, the goddess of healing, couldn't do anything for him. Remember the magicians couldn't even stand, didn't even try to recreate what had happened here because I mean they were totally demoralized by this point. And remember, this is when Pharaoh started like, oh man, maybe I'm making a mistake here. Maybe you should pray for me a little bit. Hail, god of storms. This is Set and Nut. Couldn't stop the hail, right? So it's just another way of judging. It's incredible stuff. Sometimes depict. Oh yeah, so Nut, goddess of the sky, identified by the water pot on her head, but she's also depicted sometimes as a star-covered nude woman, and sometimes a cow. Interesting. There's the censored there. Mean or Osiris mentioned already. So crop fertility. This is for the locust. The locust destroyed everything that the hail didn't, right? Darkness. Various sun deities. Ra, Amun Ra, Achman Ra, Aten. You probably read where each of the pharaohs believed that they're descended straight from Aten or Amun-Ra, something like that. They are blood kin to those gods and gods themselves on earth, right? Couldn't do anything. And then finally, death of the firstborn. And honestly, this is about all I have because I was trying to get out of here early because we were having a work day tomorrow. Who has questions or something you'd like to talk about?
I think it's interesting that it said that when, the death of the first one said that there was a cry that went up for it that never had been before and never would be again. And of course, I thought about when Yeshua was born, but that wasn't in Egypt. But I was thinking about all the things down through history that have happened in Egypt, and I was thinking it must have been really bad because there have been terrible times, in Egypt since then. I just think about when ISIS was running around, when things were so bad just here recently, the last 10 years or something.
Yeah.
But I think it said never would be again.
Never would be again, so it wasn't anything near. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. So we have February 1st, our Monday evening Bible study and our Sukkot planning committee. Whoever wants to join that committee, we've already had one meeting. I did pass on the notes from that meeting. Please take a look at that and come back with ideas and stuff when you come to it. And also, we're going to start planning for Passover. Once again, I think we plan to invite Tick to celebrate Passover with us. We were going to do it last year, and then the zombie apocalypse happened, and we were not able to do so.
Do you think the zombie apocalypse will be done by the 28th of March or the 14th of Nisan/Aviv?
I do. I think it'll be done as soon as because of the 100-day mask mandate is magic. It's going to be over. Plus, especially in this area, I don't know if anybody's noticed. I mean, it's not. Everybody seems to be a little bit smarter, whether they want to admit or not. There's no doubt in my mind that people are dying from the virus. I know for sure that people are, and that, I mean, I don't even want to get the flu, truthfully, but I think people are smart enough. But I think even if there is some kind of rules that we're supposed to adhere to, it's my personal opinion that we celebrate Passover anyway. It's just me. Nobody's going to be forced to come to it if they don't want to. And we're going to postpone the workday. So I'll try to plan it a little bit better. Other than that, who has any questions or comments or anything they would like to talk about from the Torah portion? Nobody? Abba, Father, thank you for the opportunity to come and study your word. It does strengthen us. Please go with us. Let us have a good week. Let us worship you all week, keep you in our hearts and in our minds and in our mouths. We praise you. We thank you for Yeshua. In his name, amen.
Amen.
Want to go set up for Havdalah? Maybe.